It was a crisp October morning in 2025, the kind where the Chicago skyline sparkles against Lake Michigan when my world turned upside down. I was standing in our penthouse living room, the one Raymond and I had designed together, floor to ceiling, windows, mid-century furniture, a view that took your breath away. After 48 years of marriage, I thought I knew every line of my husband's face, every cadence of his voice. But that morning Raymond stood there, his Samsonite suitcase packed neatly at his feet, and told me he was leaving. He wore the silver watch I'd given him for our 45th anniversary, its ticking the only sound in the room as he spoke. "Eleanor," he said, his voice steady, almost rehearsed. "Our marriage has been a journey, but it's reached its expiration date." Expiration date. 2 words that reduced nearly half a century of shared dreams, late-night laughter, and raising our 2 children to something you'd find on a milk carton. Outside, in the circular driveway, his 32-year-old assistant, Sophia Bennett, waited in his sleek new Porsche, her silhouette barely visible through the tinted windows. I didn't cry. I didn't scream or throw the crystal vase he'd bought me in Paris. Instead, I looked into the eyes of the man I'd loved since I was 20 and said, "I hope your new chapter gives you everything you deserve, Raymond." My voice was calm, steady, maybe even a little too steady. He blinked, almost as if he'd expected me to crumble, to beg him to stay. But as he turned and walked out, the door clicking shut behind him, I felt something shift inside me. Not despair, but resolve. Hey, before we dive deeper, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from today? Drop it in the comments below. And if this story's already pulling at your heartstrings, hit that subscribe button, because I've got something special lined up for you tomorrow. My name is Eleanor Caldwell, and this is the story of how I turned betrayal into triumph, reclaiming everything I'd helped build over 48 years. Let me take you back to 1977, when bell-bottoms were still in style and disco ruled the airwaves. I was 20, a marketing major at NYU, with a knack for crunching numbers and dreaming up campaigns that could sell ice to penguins. I wasn't the loudest in the room. My professors called me quietly brilliant, but most classmates barely noticed me. Then there was Raymond Caldwell, 23, a production assistant with a smile that could light up a soundstage. He had big dreams of building a media empire, the kind that would rival Madison Avenue's finest. We met at an advertising conference in New York, where I was presenting a data-driven campaign strategy, and he was pitching a flashy TV commercial idea that, frankly, needed a lot of work. Raymond's passion was infectious, but his numbers didn't add up. I spent 3 late nights in a cramped hotel conference room, tweaking his budget, refining his pitch, turning his wild vision into something that actually made sense on paper. When his presentation wowed the room, he looked at me across the crowd, his eyes shining with gratitude. "Eleanor," he said later over cheap coffee at a diner, "you're the secret weapon I didn't know I needed." 6 months later, he proposed with a simple gold band and a promise. "Together we'll build something unforgettable." Our early years were scrappy but full of purpose. We rented a tiny walk-up in Chicago's Logan Square, back when it was more grit than glamour. Raymond worked freelance gigs, directing commercials, while I landed a job at a small ad agency, learning the art of client pitches and media buys. Every night, we'd sit at our wobbly kitchen table, papers strewn everywhere. His storyboards next to my spreadsheets planning our future. "We start where others won't," Raymond would say, his voice brimming with ambition. "The overlooked markets, the untapped audiences, that's where empires begin." Our first big move was buying a failing local radio station in 1982, funded by a loan against my mother's heirloom necklace and my relentless negotiations with a skeptical bank manager. Raymond rebranded it, filling the airwaves with bold new shows, while I crunched the numbers to keep us afloat. Within 3 years, that station was turning a profit, and Chicago started noticing Caldwell Media Group. By our 10th anniversary, we owned 2 TV stations and a small ad agency, with Raymond's name on the company letterhead. I didn't mind, at least not then. My focus was on the deals, the contracts, the cash flow that made his creative leaps possible. Our roles felt natural, complementary. Raymond was the visionary, the one shaking hands with CEOs and charming reporters at gala events. I was the strategist, the one who structured million-dollar campaigns, negotiated with networks, and ensured every dollar was accounted for. When we launched our first national ad campaign for a major car brand, Raymond stood on stage, accepting the industry award, his charisma filling the room. I stood a few steps behind, smiling, knowing that without my media planning and budget wizardry, that campaign would have stayed a sketch on his notepad. He'd pull me close afterward, in the glow of those victories, and whisper, "Eleanor, you're the heartbeat of everything we do." For years, I believed that was enough. Our children, Clara and Nathan, grew up in the shadow of our ambition. Clara, our fierce daughter, became an environmental lawyer, fighting for clean water in courtrooms across the globe. Nathan, our introspective son, chose investigative journalism, chasing truths in war zones and city halls. They built their own paths, independent and brilliant, just as we'd raised them to be. By our 40th anniversary, Caldwell Media Group had grown into a powerhouse, with offices in Los Angeles, Miami, and Seattle. Raymond was a legend, the creative genius who turned small market stations into national brands, who crafted campaigns that defined decades. I was still his silent partner, the one who made the impossible profitable. At industry dinners, I was Raymond's wife, even though I'd secured the financing for every major deal. It stung sometimes, but I found joy in the numbers, in watching my strategies turn into thriving stations, viral campaigns, packed airtime. When Raymond was honored with the Media Innovator Award on our 45th anniversary, he thanked me as his rock, the mother of our children. Not as his partner, not as the strategist who'd built the financial scaffolding for every triumph. I clapped along with the crowd, ignoring the quiet ache in my chest. Looking back, I wonder why I didn't. Speak up, Dane. Maybe I thought love and partnership meant accepting the shadows. Maybe I believed my work spoke for itself. But love, I've learned, doesn't mean letting your worth go unnoticed. Before we move on, what do you think of Eleanor and Raymond's journey so far? Drop a comment and let me know. And if you're loving this story, make sure you're subscribed. We're just getting to the good part. The first cracks in our marriage didn't come with a bang. They were quiet, subtle, like the slow drip of a faucet you don't notice until the sink overflows. It was 2023 when Sophia Bennett walked into Caldwell Media Group. She was 32, sharp as a tack, with a master's in media production and a spark that reminded me of my younger self. Her portfolio was impressive, bold campaigns, fresh ideas, and I saw potential. "Raymond," I told him after her interview, "she could be a game changer for our digital division." He nodded, his eyes lighting up in a way I didn't think much of at the time. "She's got vision," he said. "I like that." I suggested she work directly with him on our new streaming platform project. Looking back, I wonder if that was my first mistake. At first, everything seemed fine. Sophia brought energy to the team, and Raymond was more engaged than he'd been in years. But then I started noticing things, small things, the kind you brush off when you've been married for 48 years. He began staying late at the office, claiming crunch time for the streaming launch. His wardrobe shifted, new tailored blazers, a cedarwood cologne I hadn't chosen. His phone, once left carelessly on the kitchen counter, was now always in his pocket, screen locked, face down. When I asked about it, his answers were smooth, reasonable. "Cybersecurity's tighter now, Eleanor," he'd say, "or the competition's fierce. We need to keep our edge." I chose to believe him. After nearly half a century together, suspicion felt like a betrayal of everything we'd built. But love can blind you, and trust can be a fragile thing. The real wake-up call came 3 months after our 48th anniversary. We'd celebrated with a lavish party at our penthouse, hosted for industry friends and clients. I wore a sapphire blue dress, Raymond in a custom tux, and we toasted to our legacy with vintage champagne. The press called it a testament to enduring partnership. But even then, I noticed his eyes wandering, lingering on Sophia as she mingled with guests, her laughter bright and effortless. I pushed the thought away, chalking it up to pride in his protégé. Then on a rainy Tuesday morning, as I reviewed campaign analytics in my home office, my phone rang. It was Margaret Hayes, my oldest friend, and a financial advisor who handled accounts for Chicago's elite. "Eleanor," she said, her voice low, hesitant, "this isn't an official call. It's personal. Raymond was at the bank yesterday moving assets, big ones, to accounts without your name." My stomach dropped, but my hand stayed steady on my keyboard. "How big, Margaret?" I asked. "$35 million, she replied. "He's liquidating shares in the Miami TV station and the Seattle ad agency, and he asked about transfers to the Cayman Islands." I thanked her, hung up, and sat there, staring at the rain streaking down the window. $35 million. My mind raced, piecing together the late nights, the locked phone, the new cologne. This wasn't just about Sophia. Raymond wasn't just leaving me. He was trying to take the empire we'd built together, the one I'd poured my heart and mind into for decades. I opened my laptop and spent hours digging into our accounts, cross-referencing transactions, tracing the threads of his betrayal. What I found wasn't a shock, but a confirmation. For 18 months, he'd been siphoning profits through shell companies, rerouting funds, setting himself up to walk away with everything while leaving me with scraps. What do you think Eleanor's next move should be? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm curious to hear them. And if you're hooked on this story, hit that subscribe button. We're about to turn the tables in a way you won't see coming. As the rain continued to fall outside my office window, something inside me hardened, not into anger, but into clarity. Raymond thought he could walk away with our empire, leaving me with a pat on the head and a fraction of what we'd built. He thought I was just the supportive wife, the quiet strategist who'd let him shine for 48 years. What he didn't know was that I'd been preparing for a moment like this, not out of suspicion, but out of instinct, the kind that comes from decades of navigating high-stakes deals and reading the fine print of human nature. Here's the twist. 12 years ago, I created the Caldwell Future Fund, officially a charitable foundation to empower women in media, scholarships, mentorships, the works. It was my passion project, something Raymond signed off on with a distracted nod, assuming it was just my do-gooder side hustle. But beneath the surface, it was something else entirely. A financial fortress I'd built brick by brick, acquiring strategic stakes in our company's partners, advertisers, and even our own subsidiaries. Small, quiet investments, never enough to raise eyebrows, but enough to give me leverage when the time came. Raymond had no idea, and that was exactly how I wanted it. The morning he left, I didn't collapse. I got to work. I called my daughter, Clara, who was in Geneva fighting for clean water laws. "Mom," she said, her voice groggy from the time difference. "What's wrong?" I didn't sugarcoat it. "Your father's left me for Sophia Bennett, and he's been moving millions to the Caymans. I'm activating Horizon Rising." Silence, then a sharp intake of breath. Horizon Rising, are you sure? As sure as I've ever been, I replied. How soon can you get to Chicago? I'm booking a flight now, she said, her lawyer's edge cutting through. Next, I called Nathan, my son, who was chasing a story in Bogota. Freeze everything, he said, his journalist's instincts kicking in. Every account, every deal. I'll dig into his transactions. Finally, I reached out to Lena Torres, my protégée, a financial whiz I'd mentored since her days at Wharton. Lena, I said, it's time. We're taking back what's mine. Horizon Rising wasn't just a plan. It was a symphony, every note orchestrated over years. Back in 1995, I'd insisted on protective clauses in our company's bylaws, requiring dual approval for major financial moves. Raymond had laughed, calling them Eleanor's safety nets, but signed them anyway. Now those clauses were my shield. Lena activated the Caldwell Future Fund, quietly buying up shares from key investors in our Miami and Seattle operations. Clara's legal network traced Raymond's Cayman accounts, triggering regulatory reviews without tipping him off. Nathan's digging uncovered a web of shell companies, each transaction just below the radar, totaling $50 million over 18 months. I didn't want a quick, messy fight. Revenge is for amateurs. I wanted precision, elegance, a reclamation so seamless Raymond wouldn't see it coming until it was done. My first move was a meeting with our biggest advertising partner, Zenith Media. Over coffee in their sleek downtown office, I revealed Raymond's unauthorized transfers, backed by nothing's evidence. We're reviewing our partnership, I said, calm but firm. I'd hate for your investment to be at risk. They froze their funding for our streaming platform, citing governance concerns. The ripple effect was immediate. Other investors started asking questions, lenders tightened their terms, and Raymond's empire began to wobble. 2 weeks later, at a board meeting in our glass-walled conference room, I faced Raymond for the first time since he'd walked out. He looked polished, his silver hair perfectly styled, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Eleanor, he began, addressing the board, these financial disruptions are personal, not professional. Let's resolve this privately. I smiled, sliding a folder across the table. This isn't personal, Raymond. It's about $50 million moved without board approval, violating our bylaws and SEC regulations. The room went still. The board members flipped through my evidence. Transaction logs, shell company records, Cayman transfers. Raymond's face paled, his charm useless against cold, hard numbers. These are strategic moves, he stammered, for international expansion. Without my signature? I asked, my voice steady. Without board oversight? Clara, sitting beside me, added, those transfers are under regulatory review. The Caymans aren't as private as you think. The board chair, Evelyn Porter, a no-nonsense veteran of the industry, cut in. We need answers, Raymond, not excuses. That meeting marked the turning point. The board voted for an emergency oversight committee, with me as co-chair, giving me veto power over all major transactions. Raymond's empire wasn't his anymore. It was slipping into my hands. But I wasn't done. Lena's fund kept moving, snapping up stakes in our Los Angeles station and a key ad agency. Nathan's contacts exposed a shady deal Raymond had tried to push through in Seattle. Clara's legal maneuvers locked down the Cayman accounts, forcing Raymond to return to Chicago. By the time he stormed into my office, his confidence was fraying. "What are you doing, Eleanor?" he demanded, pacing like a caged animal. "The streaming platform's funding is frozen. Zenith is pulling out. The board's turning on me." I leaned back in my chair, meeting his gaze. "I'm protecting what we built, Raymond. You should have thought twice before trying to steal." Was that the moment you felt Eleanor take control? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments. And if you're cheering her on, hit that like button and subscribe. The best part's still coming, and trust me, You won't want to miss it. 3 years have passed since that rainy morning when Raymond walked out of our penthouse, and the view of Lake Michigan from my office window has never felt clearer. I didn't just survive his betrayal, I rewrote the story. By the end of that turbulent year, I'd secured 65% of Caldwell Media Group's voting shares, a number that still makes me pause in quiet disbelief. The board, once Raymond's stage, voted unanimously to rename the company Caldwell & Caldwell Media Group, a name that finally reflects the truth. This empire was built by both of us, not just the man who stood in the spotlight. Raymond didn't fight to the bitter end. After the board meeting, after the Cayman accounts were frozen and his investors turned away, he saw the writing on the wall. He accepted a role as creative consultant, working remotely from a sleek condo in Seattle, where he lives alone. Sophia, perhaps sensing the shifting tides, left the company not long after. She took a job in London heading a media startup, and we've exchanged a few professional emails since. There's no bitterness there. She was young, ambitious, caught up in Raymond's charm. Their affair was a spark, not the fire that burned down our marriage. That fire had been smoldering for years, fueled by my silence and his blindness to my worth. I run Caldwell & Caldwell from our Chicago headquarters now, in a corner office with my name on the door. The company's portfolio, TV stations, agencies, streaming platforms, spans 3 coasts and is valued at $2.5 billion. Clara and Nathan have joined the board, bringing their brilliance to our future. Clara's pushing for sustainable media practices, while Nathan's investigative instincts keep our operations sharp. We talk often, not just as mother and children, but as partners in this legacy we're reshaping together. Sometimes late at night, I walk through our penthouse, my penthouse now, and think about those 48 years. The memory of our wedding day in a tiny Chicago chapel, Raymond's nervous grin as he slipped that gold band on my finger. The sleepless nights when Clara and Nathan were born, Raymond holding them with tears in his eyes. The countless evenings at our kitchen table, dreaming up campaigns that changed the industry. Those moments weren't a lie, but they were built on an imbalance I didn't see until it broke us. When Raymond left, I let myself grieve, not for him, but for the version of me who thought standing in the shadows was enough. I gave myself, one night, sitting by the window with a glass of Pinot Noir, watching the city lights flicker. Then I stood up, wiped my tears, and chose to fight for what was mine. People ask if I'm angry, if I regret the end of a marriage that spanned nearly 5 decades. I tell them no. I don't regret the marriage ending. I regret that it took ending the marriage to claim the recognition I'd earned. At 68, I've learned something profound. Your value doesn't depend on what others see in you. It's in what you dare to stand up for, what you build with your own hands, what you refuse to let slip away. This wasn't about revenge. It was about rebalancing the scales, setting the record straight for every campaign I strategized, every deal I closed, every dream I made possible. Every morning, I walked through the lobby of our headquarters, past a new mural, Raymond with his storyboards, me with my spreadsheets side by side, equal in size and stature. It's not a trophy. It's a reminder that truth, when fought for, endures. My story isn't about tearing down what we built. It's about claiming my place in it, brick by brick, deal by deal, until the world saw what I'd always known. I was never just Raymond's wife. I was the heartbeat of our empire. How has Eleanor's journey inspired you? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them. And if this story moved you, click those 2 videos on your screen for more tales of triumph. Hit subscribe because there's so much more to come.